Yukon's Josh Skookum is out on bail. And what was his crime? Resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. Never mind that Josh's encounter with the RCMP left him with a broken nose and 2 black eyes. The officer, of course, was just fine, and he's since been reassigned to desk duty, as the RCMP are investigating themselves for any kind of wrongdoing. Now, fortunately, the entire incident was caught on video, and it has since gone viral. And this is just one of many examples where police have abused First Nations. Now, like in the United States, where white cops are allegedly more prone to killing black people, in Canada, the power elite meme is developing as just police brutality against the First Nation minority. And certainly, ethnic minorities do tend to be the first to face the stamping boot on society. But this boot really does affect all of us. Now, this isn't a race issue, it's really a class issue. Because in the end, there's really only 2 classes. There's those who produce, and then there's those who plunder. The problem with police isn't racism. Racist cops are an effect of a cause. So what's the cause? Well, the law and order monopoly that everyone is forced to pay for. This is really about separating that idea that we are the government or that state and society are synonymous. Take, for example, the missing or murdered Aboriginal women. The demonstrators at the Shut Down Canada protest, for example, were demanding a federal inquiry. But why would they do that? That is essentially asking that very same state apparatus whose insufficient and corrupt system is responsible for the crime to investigate the crime. This is the very same state that, as late as the mid-20th century, was trying to wipe out Aboriginal culture, and even throughout the 19th century was actually trying to wipe out the race. You know, it seems to me that First Nations, especially those who sit on vital resources, should be declaring their own national sovereignty, not asking for more federal government intervention into their lives. But what do I know? You know, as the feminists now are saying I should check my white male privilege. But you know, this is really just the end result of state infiltration of the schools, and this is what happens when you indoctrinate children. Now, although certain people were a lot less freer, the amount of government oppression during the 19th century was nothing like the total state systems of the 20th. You know, there were no passports or birth certificates, taxes weren't excessive, and some of them, like income taxes, didn't even exist. And although the seeds of the total state were planted during this time, the so-called progressive era, the foundations of Western civilization were still present. You know, things like family and religion, markets and law. Now, unfortunately, though, over time and on purpose, elites have dismantled the family as the role of the church has been replaced by the power of the media and the civic religion. You know, states have perverted laws and markets and culture, and this really has evolved it into this fascist empire that we have today. You know, as Mussolini's creed goes, everything for the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. Now, as a result of the assaults on the markets and laws, beliefs, and the family unit continue to kick into overdrive, the disintegration of Western civilization can really only be reversed by going back to our foundations. But if there's one way that people are fighting back right now in the short term, it is by filming the police. Each little step we take in pushing back against this technocratic Babylon is a step towards victory. By filming the police, we're really putting them in the spotlight like they've never been before. It's really starting to hold them accountable for their actions. But filming isn't all that we should be doing. You know, Josh Skookum was arrested for resisting arrest. And since one cannot technically resist an arrest without assaulting an officer, it's actually in the language of the code. The criminal code considers anyone resisting an arrest to be committing an offense, assuming that the arrest itself is lawful. And apparently Josh was violating his probation, which under the state's criminal code makes the arrest lawful. But regardless, the lesson here is the Anglo-Saxon common law tradition that recognizes the right to resist unlawful arrest. And not only that, but the duty of bystanders to intervene and prevent rogue cops from making the arrest. In that case, one would literally be stopping a kidnapping from occurring. Now, the basis for this goes back to a 1710 case called Queen versus Tooley. There was an English constable who attempted to arrest a woman named Anne Deakins. Deakins refused, and she cried out for help. This drew the attention of a man named Tooley. Now, Tooley confronted the constable, and he demanded that he explain his actions. The constable then produced his credentials, which included a warrant for Deakins' arrest, but the warrant was actually defective, and so Tooley refused to allow this constable to arrest the woman. And then when backup was called and another constable arrived, Tooley ended up drawing his sword, and there was a sword fight, and one of the constables lost his life. Other constables arrived, they arrested Tooley, and they ended up charging him with murder. But here's where things get interesting. The court threw out the murder charge since the whole incident arose from a constable who was trying to make an unlawful arrest of Anne Deakins. The court actually pointed out that Deakins had every right to resist, and so Tooley's actions were justified. It was the constable who was at fault. And in trying to enforce an invalid warrant, the court said that the constable did not act as a constable, but a common oppressor. Now, unfortunately, I don't see this kind of justice reappearing in Canada's court system anytime soon. Times are certainly very different now than they were in 1710. But the right to refuse an unlawful arrest still does exist, even if current bureaucratic codes or obscure legalese try to mask that fact. There is common law tradition that originated in England, it extends back centuries, and it's used by most Commonwealth countries, including Canada. Yet any attempt to use this tradition outside of the approved controls of the state apparatus usually lead to failure. As in the case with many of the free men on the land, who are now either sitting in jail or are crippled by debt for not paying their income taxes or registering their car, while the movement itself is considered terrorism. Now, whether or not you agree with the free man's tactics, their understanding of common law, while perhaps, unconventional, is crucial in this social reformation that we are desperately needing right now. So as this New World Order system reaches its completion, the foundations of our free society have been lost, forgotten, and destroyed. And as you know, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. But maybe somewhere in our repetition, we'll rediscover the common law tradition. Or maybe perhaps a better way of administrating law and order in a free society. Because clearly, allowing law to develop through the legislative process or by regulations imposed by the executive branch is obviously not working out in any way whatsoever. All you got to do is look at the militarization of the police right now and all of the abuse that's going on right here in front of us. So I just wanted to bring that one to your attention today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to check the links in the description to where you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And stay tuned, guys. We got a lot more video reports coming soon right here at pressfortruth.ca.